Hi there, this is Sean, and I'm here with my 22nd seed quilt and my trusty owl companion over here in the corner. That seems to be a favorite of the folks in the Hamama Friends group. I am going to talk about overwatering today, specifically what happens if the top sits in the water and causes the seed sections to remain wet as opposed to just slightly damp, which is a big difference. Just as a recap, if seeds are submersed in water, they will 100% not germinate. So it's important to make sure that you get a really good initial dunking, soaking, and then let the quilt go so that the top part rises up out of the water, allowing drainage of the water from the top of the quilt into the bottom section, so that the seeds in the top are just wet but not soaking wet. You are drowning them if you have them sitting in water, covered with water. So in this system today, I intentionally overwatered this, and what we have here is the top, which is sitting in water, and the bottom, of course, is completely submerged. It's actually fine to have the bottom submerged in water. The main problem is it's hard to see. Sometimes quilts get a little bit ripply, and if you have the water right up to the top of the dark brown coconut coir, there probably are locations along the quilt that are technically sitting in the water. You just can't see them. So it's important to let the water recede. Normally the coconut coir expands to the point where the top is pushed up out of the water, but in this case I can see all the way around that we have 100% the top is sitting in the water, and that is causing zero drainage in the top, and I can actually see pockets here that are filled with water. So I'll be zooming into those later just to kind of give you a little more visual what to look for when you may be experiencing an overwatering situation. So this is a classic example of an overwatered quilt, a quilt that is completely soaking wet with water, and this 100% will not correct itself within the amount of time of germination, 5, 6, 4, 5, whatever, 4, 5, 6 days. This will not correct itself. So I will need to take water out later to actually fix this problem. But this is a perfect illustration of an overwatered quilt. The way that you fix this is, and once I show you how high the water is, you'll agree. Take water out from the sides. If you have a turkey baster or some kind of suction thing, you kind of suck the water out. Some people use straws, some people use pipettes. There's lots of ways to get water safely out from the sides while still keeping the top as dry as you can. So take the water out, and I would say my recommended high level mark for the water is the middle of the dark brown coconut coir. If you keep the water evenly, and you want these trays level, by the way, if you keep it evenly across the middle of the coconut coir, there's a very good chance that the top is not sitting in water at that point. So that's a good kind of measurement. So you want to kind of take the water out of the tray, and then I would get some sort of airflow going over the top. So whether you could put a fan on the left or right or back or side or whatever, just to blow air over the top, that will aid in evaporation. But if you are sitting in water, that's not going to help. You need to lower the water levels first, and then get some airflow. You can buy a cheap desk fan and just blow it over the top, or if you have a air conditioning vent or central air vent that's blowing air, you can also put that kind of sort of near the vent to improve airflow. Or if you have a ceiling fan, you can stick it underneath the ceiling fan. Anything to get that air flowing over the top, that will help with evaporating and getting the water out of the top. But again, it's not going to work if you don't lower the level of the water in the tray to the middle of the coconut coir. So I'm going to zoom in here real quick, and hopefully I can drag in the right way. And if you can look, I'm actually going to see if I can move this down a little bit without making it too crazy. Ooh, there we go. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I want you to look here. You see those bubbles right here? You see how you have all those bubbles? in these sections, that's just water. That's filled, loaded with water. And that happened because I did a really good dunk, which is what you want to do. You want to get a good dunk. And then the top just kind of sat there, and the coconut coir did not, in this case, push the top up out of the water. So if you can see around the edges here, you have water that's basically just touching the edge of the top of the quilt, and that's super bad. I'm actually going to slide. Let's see if this will slide over here. Here we go. I'm not sure if this is going to be perfect or not, but if you look around the edges, you will see. Here we go. If you look around the edges, you can see that this top is touching the water, and that is guaranteed going to wick if the top, which is paper, is touching the water, then the bottom of the top, which is that fabric part, it's what holds the seeds up, is 100% sitting in the water, and your seeds are also sitting in water. These seeds will not germinate until the water recedes, one way or the other, whether it's evaporation in the tray or evaporation coming up out of the quilt top itself. So but in this case, these will not germinate until I will absolutely be lowering the water. Lower the water to the middle of the coconut coir, and then after you've lowered the water to the middle of the coconut coir, you want to, let's get that zoomed in. Hi, little guy. Boop. All right, let me raise this up a little bit. Oh yeah, thumb the lens and everything. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, we definitely want to lower the water levels, and we want to get some airflow. The next thing that I'm going to do after I finish this video is I'm going to bring this upstairs, get a turkey baster, suck out some of the water so that I can get it down to the middle of the dark brown coconut coir, but also I'm going to be putting this right in the path of a nice fan to help not just with drainage but also with evaporation. Very, very important two-step process. Within a day, these sections, which are currently waterlogged, visibly waterlogged, should recede and look a little bit more like just, not waterlogged sections. You should be able to see the seeds very, very clearly through the paper. And if you touch them, they should not be filled with water like little water balloons. So this is a 100% great example of overwatering. And again, the fix for that is to, once again, lower the water using probably either a straw or some sort of tube, or just if you have a turkey baster, just kind of suck the water out to the middle of the coconut, the dark brown coconut coir, and also get some good airflow going. Generally, once you reduce the water levels to the middle of the coconut coir or below, the top should automatically drain, but it's a slow process. So having a fan or some kind of airflow from the side might actually help a little bit, just dry things out a little better and aid in evaporation. So any questions, comments, please leave them in the YouTube video below, or if you're over on the Facebook Hamama Friends group, go ahead and leave questions, comments, concerns, suggestions over there as well. Hopefully this video came out okay. But again, if you are experiencing this type of overwatering, you want to catch it on day one. As soon as you dunk, like let's say an hour later, if that top hasn't risen up out of the water, you've got a problem, and it's better to catch it in the first couple hours or the first day than it is to wait until day 5 or 6 to post a picture of the group saying, "What? This is day 6. Why hasn't my quilt germinated?" And we're going to tell you, mostly if it looks like this, we're going to tell you are overwatering. And the problem, and again, I'm going to mention this real quick, the problem with waiting until day 5 or 6 to determine that you have an overwatering problem is that this has been sitting in water for 6 days. Mold typically happens after day 10, which is why the majority of these quilts have a 10-day period. But if you have these sitting in water for 5 to 6 days, and then you figure it out, and then you take the water out, and you get your evaporation going, it resets the clock as far as how long it takes the seeds to germinate and grow. It's still a 10-day period, but you've added 5 to 6 days on top of that. So now we're talking about a 15 to 16-day growing period, and at that point you might actually get mold. There's a very good chance that beyond 10 days, especially when you reset. If you do decide to reset, and I know I've mentioned this before, let's say you're at day 4 or 5 and you're not getting germination, you realize that this is what you have after day 5, you'll want to do a reset. And the really quick way to do a reset is to remove the entire quilt from the tray, put it onto a plate to drain, completely empty and clean the tray really well, then fill the tray with clean filtered water to the fill line. Actually, I don't even think you need to fill it to the fill line at that point, but in fact, ignore what I just said. That's not the way you do it. You take the quilt out of the tray, clean it really well, once it's empty and clean, put the quilt back into the tray empty, then slowly fill the water up to the middle of the coconut coir very, very slowly, and from the sides, so you don't get additional water in the top, to the middle of the coconut coir. So basically, when you first soak these quilts, you fill it to the fill line, you put the quilt in, you hold the quilt under until it goes from light tan to dark brown, and then you let it go, right? But if you've waited 5 to 6 days, you got to do a reset. So you take the quilt out, you empty the tray and clean it, then you put the quilt back in empty and slowly fill it up from the sides so that the water comes back up to the middle of the coconut coir. And that's all you have to do. That's a good reset. It kind of clears out the old stagnant water, the 5-6 day old water. It gives you a fresh set of water to do basically it's still going to take 10 days to grow these plants beyond the reset, but it definitely gives them a fighting chance. It reduces the chance of mold and mildew and fungus kind of growing in there. So I definitely recommend, if you've had more than a day or two of your seeds soaking in water and not germinating because of overwatering, you definitely want to look into doing a full reset. Takes you about 5-10 minutes, no big deal, but this can be easily avoided. This is my 22nd quilt, and I intentionally added too much water to see if I can get it to do this, and I did. You'll notice over here in the corner, you probably can't see it, but this corner is a little bit dipping in. Actually did a pretty good job of peeling these back. Both of these corners are dipping down. They're actually dipping down into the water more than just touching. They're actually in the water. So if you have so much as one little corner dipping down, that corner will wick water into the top, and that top will get absolutely oversaturated with water very quickly. So you want to make sure that if you've got a situation like this where your corner is down in the water, especially if it's just the corner and not the rest of it, as we have here, you want to peel those corners and edges back so that they are not touching or dipping down into the water. So the next thing I'm going to do after this, looks like we're at almost a 15-minute video here, is reduce my water levels and get some airflow going. And then you will notice within a couple days, or I will notice anyway, that I will start to get germination after the water drains down into the bottom and the evaporation pulls the water out of the top. Again, any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the video below, or leave them over on the Facebook Friends book for Hamama. Thank you. Hey, this is Sean. I just wanted to send a quick update to this video. You'll notice that after I drained the tray of water, those two sections in the back that were completely soaking wet, filled with water like a water balloon, that water almost immediately drained down into the bottom of the tray. So within a couple days, you'll notice that this will start to dry out. We'll start to get some good germination. And as long as I don't add water to higher than the middle of the coconut coir, everything will be fine. So I just wanted you to see that that drainage happened almost within a few seconds. I could see that the water was immediately starting to recede into the bottom of the tray and the coconut coir. And again, as long as I very carefully add water from the sides to the middle of the coconut coir, everything should be fine going forward with this quilt. Thanks.